2025 meetings of the Environmental Review Board to order. I will now call on board members to indicate their attendance at the meeting. Mr. Zayer. Mr. Davidson.
Yes.
Dr. Nemec.
Yes.
Mr. Horn.
Present.
Mr. Eckert.
Present.
Mr. Green.
Present.
Dr. Alexandrovich.
You're online.
Mr. Kozerski.
Here.
Mr. Ketzenberg.
Present.
Ms. Schrader.
Here.
Mr. Bosman.
Here.
Dr. Grant.
Here.
And Vice Chair Etzler. We have a quorum of the board present, so we can proceed with the agenda. Our first order of business today is approval of the summary of the October 16th, 2025 board meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the summary? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve them.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 The summary is approved as presented. Thank you. Mr. Woods?
Well, thanks so much, and really appreciate it. Thanks to the Vice Chairman for getting us started. We want to thank you all for being here. I know we're right smack dab in the middle of holiday season and busy schedule, so really appreciate everybody taking time. I know there's several important items on the agenda for the board today, and want to thank you for taking the time out, share your expertise with IDEM, and including on some important rulemakings, but also I know in the interim, since the last board meeting, there's been important information shared around some of the work groups and some efforts that we're looking at over the longer haul around future actions in response to some of the governor's executive orders, but also opportunities to comprehensively analyze and provide us some feedback around various fees at IDEM, and really appreciate you all taking the time out of your schedule to help through those work groups. I just will be exceedingly brief and just cover a few high-level items. We're at the end of the year, and I've been fortunate enough to be service commissioner at IDEM since February. So I think a lot of exciting things happening, a lot of time to transition for our staff. Wanted to mention a few key items. So we have had about 80 new employees, including me, start this year. So a lot of new blood out of an agency of 800. So about 10% of our employees have started this calendar year. It's a lot of new fresh set of eyes. But just a couple weeks ago, the governor had his annual event to recognize long-term state employees, where it's a high bar. You have to have served in state government for 35 years or longer, but we had more than a dozen IDEM employees hit the 35, 40, and 45-year mark. So a lot of institutional knowledge that we've got in the agency, and folks who spent their career in public service, serving Hoosiers, protecting our air, water, and land. And so we're really blessed to have an excellent workforce who I think weathered that time of transition and have hit the ground running on several new initiatives that we're really excited about. I'll say we've been recognized, and a few of our particular employees have gotten shout outs in the form of statewide awards recently. Our designated ethics official at IDEM and our Office of Legal Counsel, Mike French, recently got recognized by the the Inspector General's office, rather, as the 2025 Ethics Official of the Year, which is great. He does a fantastic job keeping IDEM and our boards and commissions on the straight and narrow when it comes to our ethical obligations, and really proud of that recognition. And then just last week, Megan Espinda, IDEM's agricultural liaison, and I'll say IDEM is, as far as I can tell, the only state environmental agency in the country that has a dedicated agricultural liaison, partly because of our unique programs that serve Hoosier farmers. But she was recognized by the Indiana Farm Bureau as the winner of the 2025 Agricultural Excellence in Agriculture Award winner. So really excited for that recognition of the work that she does every day. Through working with Hoosier farmers and ranchers and folks around our state. I was just going to mention a couple things. I think we've talked about a few of these items before, but we will have several reports that are due this year, both pursuant to certain pieces of legislation enacted by the General Assembly, but also some of the governor's executive orders, and we'll make sure that folks have a copy and that they'll prominently displayed on our website. But one being, I know executive order we talked about before, this is 2538, which directed us to look at whether or not there were state environmental regulations that were unnecessarily burdensome or did not improve the environment or were not supported by law or the best available science. And we've got the board kind of taking a look at some of the comments we received, but we were reporting back one additional report, in addition to one that we issued July 1st of this year after taking some public comments, where we're being asked a little bit more specific question about any programs that don't have a federal counterpart or where we may be more stringent or different than federal requirements. And so we'll have a report that's out to the public, to the governor and to the legislative council later this year, I think closer to December 31st, that lays out some of those issues, also helps to provide a status report on some of the efforts the board's undertaking, some of the efforts that IDEM's undertaken, both in terms of in the form of some future legislative efforts and future rulemakings and deregulatory actions that will need to go through the board, some actions on non-rule policies, some of which are on the agenda for today. We also have a report due for legislation I know we talked about before, Senate Enrolled Act 103 for the 2025 session. This is a bill related to OZO non-attainment in Northwest Indiana, including the attendant programs for automobile emission check. And so that bill had tasked us with working with our counterparts at US EPA to explore whether or not there was opportunities for emission reductions, as well as tools for regulatory relief under the Clean Air Act. And glad to say we've had a lot of productive conversations with a number of groups inside the state, but also our friends at US EPA. We'll be reporting back on that progress. I think there's several different potential options that EPA could pursue to try to get what would be one of the last few partial county non-attainment areas in the state. We think we can squint and see on the horizon a day not too far in the future where all of our 92 counties in whole are in attainment with all national ambient air quality standards, which are set at a level that is requisite to protect public health with an adequate margin of safety. That would be a huge feather in our cap, and we're really excited about working on some of that, but also reducing unnecessary burden in the form of requirements that this board has taken up related to nitrogen oxide, reusable technology requirements, as well as emission check programs in Lake and Porter County. So that report will be forthcoming. I'll say as we look at having just wrapped up a special session with the General Assembly focused on redistricting, and also expecting a very short legislative session in 2026 come January. I think there's a few pieces of legislation that have been filed already, and they're available for the public to review on the IGA website that would impact IDEM related to local air agencies. I think continued interest and probably likely some legislation related to issues around PFAS, which has been a popular topic. We will be looking at introduction probably closer to January than today of an agency bill, which will likely be one of the governor's priority bills that looks to comprehensively clean up and clarify provisions of Title 13 of the Indiana Code. So a lot of, I think, non-controversial, some sections that are outdated, some references that need to be updated, some streamlining and more consistency between our 4 statutory boards and commissions. So obviously the Environmental Rules Board is an important one. I will tell you, as we went through this effort at IDEM to kind of catalog some of this stuff, 133 times in Title 13, this board is told to shall do something. That's a lot. So, there's, I think, some attendant provisions to say, hey, some of these things have already happened, so maybe they need to be mays rather than shalls, and maybe some of them, we need to get on. And so it's an opportunity, I think, for us, along with some of the changes to the administrative code that IDEM is looking at, working with this board in the coming years, I think ultimately will lead to a slightly streamlined book of environmental law in the state that ultimately will be more readable, will allow people to understand and find the provisions that relate to the key programs that they're interested in at IDEM. So we're really excited about that effort. I think there's some, like I say, a copy I think will be available in early January, but then a lot of work has gone into that to help inform the General Assembly as they contemplate potential changes to Title 13 in a more comprehensive way. So I think we would end up resulting in potentially about 90 sections of the law that either could be consolidated or don't need to exist anymore or outdated. 250 unnecessary mandates. Again, many of those are for this board or for the department, but a lot for folks outside of our agency. Unnecessary reporting requirements that don't improve the environment, where we get paperwork sent to us and we don't do anything with it, and things like that I think will help clean up our books and help us as we implement these delegated federal programs and other directives by the General Assembly. So we're excited about that effort. And then I'll just say, I think one other thing I wanted to note is that I think we're continuing our efforts that we talked about a little bit before to highlight success stories, and some from this year, but many that are results of decades of work from folks in this room around improvements in environmental progress in the state of Indiana. So you may have seen some work around the announcement of the completion of the Dig Indy project here to address combined sewer overflows. In this area, we took that opportunity to highlight successes in CSO communities throughout Indiana. I think there's more to come on that end. I think you'll see a little bit more from us on really kind of second to none compared to other states' performance on lead service line inventories, where we're up closer to 100% of lead service lines being inventoried under the Safe Drinking Water Act to address those potential exposures throughout the state of Indiana and to put us in a place after action by this board to approve the lead and copper rule revisions earlier this year to implement those programs in a way that ultimately protects Hoosiers. But also a number of other areas. We're really excited to help emphasize some of the really important progress that has taken place. And so as part of that, we're really excited as well next year in 2026 to be celebrating our 40th anniversary as an agency, which is exciting. So a lot of work that IDEM does existed before 1986, but we were formed as an agency in 1985 by the General Assembly. And we do have employees that have been here longer than that. We have folks who've logged 50 years and served at preceding agencies, Department of Health and otherwise. So it's an exciting time, and we're looking forward to not just the next 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 years, but also the next 40 years. So that's led us to having some deliberate conversations, development of a draft strategic plan for the first time in a while at IDEM, development of an agency vision, emphasis on our agency values, as well as a plan that really lays out over the next 3 years some things that we'd like to accomplish around deliberate development, empowering our teams, giving them the tools that they need, hopefully reducing uncertainty in their jobs, and then tackling kind of getting back to the basics of our core statutory responsibilities. And so I wanted to keep you in the loop on that effort because I think it's one where we've been talking to an extended group of our leaders, kind of getting feedback, and it's really part of kind of an overall effort to make sure we have engaged employees that we're thinking about tough conversations around secession for some of our long-term employees, but also how we're making sure that we're meeting our employees where they're at. That includes folks that started this year, but also those who have been with us for 40 plus years. And so I'm really excited about some of those efforts. And then with that comes corresponding challenges, but also opportunities we have as we complete some important renovations for our office space here in Indianapolis, and a number of other important things. So just wanted to give you an update on a few fronts there because we're very excited, and we know we've got lots of important work to do with the board over the next few years. So I really appreciate everybody's time and helping to share your expertise with us today on the important agenda items, but happy to also answer any questions that folks may have.
Any questions? Thank you, Commissioner. Now we'll call on Billy Franklin to give us an update on rulemaking.
Good afternoon. My name is Billy Franklin. I am the Section Chief of Rules Development within the Texas Legal Counsel. Currently, we have our next board meeting tentatively scheduled for March 12, 2026. At that meeting, we anticipate having 4 rules up for preliminary adoption: industrial stormwater general permit updates, open burning, public water supply, and national ambient air quality standards, also known as NAAQS. That is all I have for now. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions? Thank you. Before we proceed to the rulemaking, Mr. Bump, would you please cover logistics for those people that are remote participants?
Absolutely. Thank you, Vice Chair. Good afternoon to those attending the meeting online. All participants will be muted when they join the meeting, but participants may be able to address the board during the open forum portion of the meeting towards the end. We do ask that you do identify yourself when speaking. For those joining us via Teams, if you have a question or technical issue during the meeting, please use the raise hand or chat feature. Participants must only send chats to the host. To access the raise hand and chat feature at the top of your screen, depending on your device, you will see a menu bar, and you may have to touch your screen before the menu pop up on the device. At the beginning of that menu, there is a chat icon, which you can click on to show the chat dialog box. You should also see the raise hand option. Please utilize the raise hand or chat features if you have any questions or comments, and you will be called upon at the appropriate time. If any of the members of the media have joined us via Teams, please utilize the chat feature or email media@idem.in.gov if you have any questions. If you wish to speak during the rulemaking hearing portion of today's meeting, please fill out a speaker card using the forms link that has been provided in the Teams chat, and you will be called on at the appropriate time to give a brief testimony. Only meeting attendees who have filled out this form will be called upon to speak. For those in the room today, I would also remind board members to please speak up so that everyone in attendance and being online are able to hear. And for those who are answering questions in today's meeting, please repeat those questions prior to providing a response. I will now turn the meeting back over to our board vice chair.
Thank you. Today we have a hearing on the final adoption of the coal combustion residuals rule. The rule being considered at today's meeting was included in board packets and was available for public inspection at the Office of Legal Counsel, 13th floor, Indiana Government Center North. The entire board packet is also available on IDEM's website at least 1 week prior to each board meeting. A written transcript of today's meeting will be made. The transcript and any written submissions will be open for public inspection at the Office of Legal Counsel. A copy of the transcript will be posted on the rules page of the agency website when it becomes available. If you wish to testify in any of today's hearings, you will need to submit your request for comment. Please fill out the comment card and get it at the sign-in table. And for those of you online, there is a form that you can fill out and submit. Please respectfully limit your comments to 4 minutes. This time will be enforced. Now we will proceed. Will the official court reporter for the cause please stand, raise your right hand and state your name.
Lindy, I'm here.
Do you solemnly affirm that you will keep complete and true notes of all that transpires and prepare a transcript thereof and faithfully perform all duties imposed upon you as an official reporter of the state of Indiana?
Yes.
Thank you. This is a public hearing before the Environmental Rules Board of the state of Indiana concerning the final adoption of the coal combustion residual rule. I will now introduce Exhibit A, the rule as preliminarily adopted with items suggested changes into the record of the hearing. Kayleen Walsh will present the rule.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Keelan Walsh from the Rules Section of the Office of Legal Counsel. And I'm here to present the coal combustion residuals rulemaking LSA number 21-458 for your consideration for final adoption. On April 17th, 2015, the US EPA published a final rule that established national minimum criteria for the disposal of coal combustion residuals, or CCR, as a solid waste, and the design, operation, and closure of new and existing CCR landfills and surface impoundments under Subtitle D of the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act of 1976. This final rule became effective on October 19th, 2015, and is codified in the Code of Federal Regulations at 40 CFR 257 Subpart D. When the federal CCR rule was first established in 2015, Indiana rules at 329 IAC 10 permitted regulated entities to dispose of CCR in landfills known as restricted waste sites. Indiana rules at that time did not regulate CCR surface impoundments during operation, and the state standards applicable to closure of CCR surface impoundments differed from the new federal closure standards in some cases. Consequently, IDEM published a final rule in the Indiana Register on December 7, 2016 that incorporated by reference into 329 IAC 10-9-1 the federal standards for CCR surface impoundments at 40 CFR 257 Subpart D. After promulgation of the US EPA final rule in 2015, the US Congress passed the Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation Act of 2016, or the WIN Act. Section 2301 of the WIN Act, codified at 42 USC 6945D, provides the opportunity for states to seek US EPA approval to operate a state permit program for CCR units. To operate in lieu of the federal CCR rule, a state CCR permit program must be at least as protective as the federal standards. The first notice of comment period for the CCR rulemaking was published in the Indiana Register on October 13th, 2021, notifying the public of IDEM's intent to establish a comprehensive state permitting program for CCR. The second notice of comment period for the CCR rulemaking published in the Register on December 21st of 2022 proposed amendments to rules at 329 IAC 10-3-1, 329 IAC 10-3-4, and 329 IAC 10-9-1, as well as adding a new article at 329 IAC 14, concerning the establishment of a state permitting program for CCR. Subsequently, a continuation of second notice of comment period was published in the Register on January 18th of 2023 to give interested parties additional time to submit comments on the rulemaking. During this time, the General Assembly passed amendments to IC 13-19-3-3 through Public Law 249-2023, which was effective in May 4th of 2023. This law required that Indiana create a state permitting program that is no more stringent than US EPA regulations at 40 CFR 257 subpart D. So in response to the passage of Public Law 249-2023, the comments received during the first and second continuations of second notice of comment period and the preliminary adoption hearing, as well as publication of the May 8th, 2024 federal final rule, which established regulatory requirements for legacy impoundments and management units. Item proposed to revise the new article added at 329 IAC 14 of the draft rule to incorporate by reference the July 1st, 2025 version of the CFR, and also to ensure the draft rule does not impose a restriction or requirement that's not imposed by the federal CCR rule except for the new permitting standards. Accordingly, item published an additional notice of public comment period, previously known as a third notice of public comment period, on November 5th of 2025, reflecting these updates. During this third written comment period, item invited the public to comment on both the preliminarily adopted version of the rule and the version of the rule that had been updated significantly based on comments made during the preliminary adoption hearing. Most, if not all, comments received during this comment period pertain to the updated draft of the rule. The rule version presented today reflects the most recent updates, including minor changes made in response to comments from the third comment period. So with all that said, item respectfully requests that the board final adopt this rule as presented, and program staff are available to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Do we have any speaker cards?
No, sir.
We have any online speakers?
I do have just 2 points. One's very minor. On page 7 of the rule info sheet, the board action preliminary adoption on December 11th, it should be 2024, not 2025. It's the under board action and hearings. And my other question is a little more involved, but it has to do with the expected date when this rule will become effective. And I think it was sometime in 2027 based on historical approvals of the US EPA. It is my understanding that as you go through this rulemaking, you involve EPA to make sure that you've got all your I's dotted and T's crossed. And I would also hope that the current EPA will move a little faster. So I'm just wondering about that timing and how it might affect people, the affected sources. Thank you.
Okay, to answer that, I am not as versed on the specifics of the timing for the state implementation plan and all of that. I don't know. Lindsay, are you able to answer that?
So, if this is preliminary, or if this is adopted for final rule,
Would you
Item-
please?
this is Lindsay Hummel. I'm with the Office of Land Quality Permits Branch. So if the board adopts the rule today, we will be filling out an application to submit to the APA. Our timeline on that is about, we're predicting about 6 months, but it may be sooner. And then we'll submit that to the EPA, and as far as their review goes, we're not entirely sure. They have indicated that they're wanting to streamline this process, but as far as what that timeframe is, we're not sure.
So you have been working with them as you've put this all together, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comment? Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from board members? This hearing is concluded. The board will now consider final adoption of the coal combustion residual rule. Do we have any further questions or discussion? None? So first we need a motion to adopt items suggested changes.
So moved.
And a second? Moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. We will do this by voice vote. Mr. Zaire? Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Dr. Nemec?
Yes.
Mr. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Dr. Alexandrovich?
Yes.
Ms. Kozerski?
Yes.
Mr. Ketzenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schroeder?
Yes.
Mr. Bossman?
Yes.
Dr. Graham?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Etzler votes yes. That's 12 yeses and 0 no's. Thank you. Now we need a motion for final adoption of the rule as amended.
So moved.
Mr.
Second.
Davidson. Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Who is the second?
I did a second. Dr. Graham.
Thank you. So by voice vote, Mr. Zaire, Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
Dr. Nemec,
Yes.
Mr. Horn,
Yes.
Mr. Eckert,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Alexandrovich,
Yes.
Ms. Kozerski,
Yes.
Mr. Ketzenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Schrader,
Yes.
Mr. Bossman,
Yes.
Dr. Graham,
Yes.
Vice Chair Etzler votes yes. The rules adopted 12-0. Thank you very much. So we have some non-rule actions that we want to present to you today. First, we have updates on the 2 work groups that have been established. I am on the work group that is working on fees. Historically, items, fees have not kept pace with the economic times, and IDEM has put together a work group of board members to review those fees and also to look at our entire permit structure to determine whether or not we have the correct permits in place or if we have some permits that aren't needed anymore. So we are looking at a broad spectrum of the financial stability of the agency, because statutorily, the permitting program is supposed to be self-sufficient. And we have not changed fees on any of the rules since 2021 and 2022. And so the work group is examining the fee structure, the permitting process, and we'll make a recommendation to the board regarding how we believe the agency should proceed with implementation of any changes to our fee structure. Our next meeting is July 5th, boy, I'm jumping way, January 15th at 10:30. And as we are scheduled right now, we will bring a report back to the board in March on our status and how we see the agency proceeding. Are there any questions? Now I'll call on Dr. Graham, who is on the work group that is updating Executive Order 25-38. Dr. Graham?
Thank you very much. We did have a productive first meeting of this work group on the burden reduction initiative and the executive order. We discussed 4 possible areas of activity: requesting change in federal statutes or regulations that impact Indiana burden, recommending changes in Indiana statute which create unnecessary burden, recommending rulemaking reform that IDEM could do on its own initiative, and non-rulemaking guidance or other activities that IDEM could do on its own. A key question that we kind of focused on is how much in resources does IDEM have to put into this activity? Because you can imagine a wide range of activities that could be done. And basically, and Billy can give details on this if necessary, but basically there are several staffers in Billy's operation who would be doing most of this work. So we're not talking about hundreds of people working on this. We're talking on a handful or so. And we were briefed on 10 items that are in the works right now that IDEM's working on, and a number of them are in the water area. So we discussed what the task force priorities should be within those broad categories, and we thought items that IDEM could do on its own might be a natural first priority. Those that require General Assembly action might be a second area, and then federal action, requesting federal action, might be a third. We also had a good discussion, I thought, of how much the task force should get into the merits of each of these items now, as opposed to waiting until IDEM actually has a rulemaking proposal, for example, and then having our traditional role as a board reacting to those. And I think we felt that the task force could make suggestions on process of how the item is going about finding these items and reviewing public comments and so forth, but that we ought to maybe hold until the board plays its traditional role and we judge the merits of these individual actions. So that's the notes I had taken from my meeting, but there are other members of the task force who are here, and I wanted to give them an opportunity to say anything if they would like to.
I will, Dr. Graham, I'll add that we did have a discussion about prioritizing media, and at the meeting, it was indicated that we may look at water based regulations first, but there was some question about what exactly we were, hoping to get completed by that March milestone. So I think that the agency is still reviewing that question.
Thank you. Any questions? Well, we'll proceed to a discussion about late fee assessment.
Good afternoon. I volunteer at the meeting today. My name is Brianna Teller, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer for IDEM. Today I'll be going over the non-rule policy document regarding the assessment of late fees and other consequences from non-payment of fees. I do want to give special acknowledgement to Robin Champion and April Rushbrook. As we've mentioned in previous ERB meetings, the Finance Division in the Office of Legal Counsel has been working on an internal project to update and streamline our internal collections policy and processes. Included in this project was review in regard to the assessment of late payment fees and non-payment consequences as outlined in statute and rule. We wanted to ensure that the regulated community was aware of the existing statutes and our intention to assess late payment fees and to consider consequences for non-payment of fees for the activities in which we are authorized to do so. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do have a question. I represent utilities and also have, need to collect fees, as you know. One of the, points that has been made, and I believe there's still an opportunity to comment on this document through the end of this week. That's correct. There are various methodologies for payment within item. Some are fairly streamlined and, web-based. Others rely on, hard copy assessments mailed, and we've always encountered instances of misdirected mail, and so the ability to pay promptly is related to the system in which item administers those fees. So that is something that we're wondering if that is intended to accompany the enaction of this policy.
Yeah, so in regards to that, so essentially with our mail, I mean, we have, as we all probably have at some point, some kind of issues in regards to the routing of that mail. There are a few things and ideas that we have kind of discussed internally just in regards to addressing it. A lot of it is just we have a lot of different divisions that are receiving mail, and also you know, we're dealing with the mail order that is delivering those to all, 20 different places. And so there has been discussion in regards to how we can streamline our mail operation, in regards to that. A large reason of us having that conversation is prompted by, the abrupt receipt of checks. In ensuring that, those checks meet, not only, make it within our state requirements of us receiving and depositing that check within that 24-hour window, but also just ensuring that we have proper controls on those checks. And so there has been discussion in regards to, essentially having our internal mail go to one place and be handled by like one person and distributed by one person or something along those lines. So that way, really the checks is a big component of some of the delays that we see at times. It's just when we receive that check actually at that time. It is easier at times when things go to our electronic lockbox, but when things come actually through the like actual mail, that's where we generally see complications. Another component is we do have the online portal. From, my perspective as chief financial officer, that is our preferred methodology. Now, while there is not always capability to be able to use e-check, and those different things, or there may be, someone may have an internal policy to not pay that service fee or things like that. We do offer those, and those are the quickest way to ensure that we not only receive those items in a timely manner, but also are able to immediately address those. If we receive it and there's a question in regards to like, what is this payment for, and other things, having that contact information, we work internally to, as close as we can identify what that may be for. We also have had, and Robin Champion, our accounts receivable division manager, she's had conversations actually with the technology company that runs the web payment form. And we have done some work in regards to like adding different options to the drop down, making sure that the language is a lot clearer for those who are using that platform as well. So there has also been a lot of different techniques that we've kind of been looking for in addition to this in regards to like the initial payments upfront in general.
We might have just said this is quite, but if I was gonna add, I think you're spot on. I'll say, I think from my perspective, I think we shared, and I'm sorry, we haven't in great detail, but I think a component of the work the fees work group is doing is, hey, let's make sure we have a good sense of what our collections rate is. It's relatively high as an agency, but fairly inconsistent across some of those programs. I do think there's probably some technological changes that we're hoping for will be successful in making more consistency in terms of both where we have, an electronic component And I think implementation of this non-rule policy will be, you know, some more notice to folks that we've had this authority, but we intend to potentially use it to address where we have collections. And the corresponding, I think, policy that Brianna was mentioning will lay out things like for the agency when it's appropriate to write off, you know, unpaid bills or refer to the Attorney General's office if there's unpaid bills. I think it'll be probably very different across the agency, but I think where there's an individual customer that is in this scenario, we'd likely have communication with them in advance, both electronically and otherwise, to make sure we're letting them know if there's late fees being assessed and why and how we're approaching that. And probably very different if you're in the voluntary remediation program versus an NPDES permit. And so I think there's, as you know, great variation across how the agency operates. We're hoping to get a little bit more consistency both with this policy, but also with some of the systems that correspond to how we build in the first place, but then also how we implement this. So I think that's an element that we wanted to make sure we were as clear as possible. I think I'll say I'm usually skeptical of guidance documents generally. I think this is a really good use of this tool. And as you all may know, under Title 13, we kind of provide notice to the board to review this and any feedback that you may have. But I think in this case, it's largely designed to send a signal to folks that, hey, this authority we've always had, and here's how we intend to approach it. But there's probably going to be some variation in how that works across different item programs.
And I will add to that, like the aspect of us assessing late fees and having late payment fees become and be, you know, a clearer aspect of our operation, does not negate our customer service at all. So if we have something and there's an issue with an or something like that, you know, it does still have a level of subjectivity. If we have an issue or there's some reason it causes a delay from an operational standpoint or otherwise. So that it is still going to continue to be a focus of our team, that we are doing those things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we will have a presentation on financial assurance.
Vice Chairman, if you don't mind, well, this comes up, I just wanted to maybe mention one thing. I mentioned before, we have 4 statutory boards, and I think one of our goals, as we've talked to Billy as well as others, is we would love to have some connectivity between those boards and the financial assurance boards, which we have Nevis who's going to be here who chairs that board, that helps to provide advice to our petroleum branch. They also have rulemaking authority for the excess liability trust fund that addresses underground and above ground storage tanks. And so we invited the chairman to join us because I think this is a goal that we have, is to maybe make sure those 4 boards are talking to each other. And just as a reminder, the other 2 deal with recycling market development grants, as well as compliance advisory panel that helps to inform the agency on small entity compliance, especially with Clean Air Act obligations. So one of the ideas we've been kicking around is, hey, how do we get these folks to talk to each other? Because they're all volunteering their time and expertise to us and as an agency. So I just wanted to kind of explain the background and welcome this presentation to help connect the dots between some of the work that the FAB does in relation to the URB.
Thank you for that. I don't have a presentation per se, just a kind of quick introduction of what the FAB board is. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nevis BJ. I'm the principal department of environmental and Ceratec drilling, and I also happen to be the chairman of the Underground Storage Tank Financial Assurance Board. One of the boards, as the Commissioner said, is statutorily required, and we oversee the Excess Liability Trust Fund and the Underground Storage Tank Program. And one of the things that we've seen from our board standpoint, and particularly in the last couple of years, as changes to the Excess Liability Trust Fund has happened, there's discussions about rule changes, there's been changes in fees, that we're seeing, quite frankly, the way we're interacting with the agency in particular morph a little bit from a more, what may have been contentious at one point in time, just as recently as a couple of years ago, to where we're trying to create a more collaborative approach with the agency, because we all kind of are on the same team. And one of the discussions we've had with Commissioner Woods and Brian is how can the 4 boards that are part of that are required kind of either work in concert with one another or at least have some discussions, because to be perfectly blunt, I've never been to this board meeting. I'm sure you've never been to the FAB board meeting, or if you have, great. There's just very limited interaction between the boards. So particularly on the excess liability trust fund side, we do anticipate seeing some rule changes. There was some fee changes that are going to be made in particular. So to the extent that our board can work with your board and offer some kind of approach where there can be some synergy together, we certainly would like to see that, because I think there is opportunity for that and it could be beneficial for not only IDEM, but our boards to kind of streamline our approaches. So we don't necessarily have a presentation per se, it was more of an introduction and just Salem, but also to say, let's, if there's an ability for our boards to all work together, I think it could be beneficial for IDEM and our working groups as well.
Thank you. Any questions?
The idea makes sense to me to have communication between the boards, but I'm not sure, and maybe it's too soon, how that communication would be handled, by whom, with whom, and how the information would flow so that as members, we understood the broader context of the attempt to coordinate these boards.
And I don't know if there's an answer to that right now, obviously, but I think there's some kinks to try to figure out. But also our board is very specific related to underground storage tanks and the excess liability trust fund. So, at least from our point of view, from the FAB board point of view, I'd see if there's rule changes specifically related to the excess liability trust fund program or the underground storage tank program, then how that would work, I'm not sure yet, but we'd certainly like the opportunity and be open and flexible to try to figure out what that would work and how that would look. I don't know if we have an answer right now, but it's something we can certainly at least thoroughly think those and try to figure out.
I figured it was too soon.
Something certainly to think about, because I think it could be something that could be beneficial for both groups.
Well, I'll maybe just mention one, as the work groups go through their efforts on fees and the executive board, I do know there were some comments and maybe some areas where fees and or, regulatory changes that may be a perfect opportunity for passing the baton to the financial assurance board, which is very much structured like the ERB with very specific, backgrounds and industries represented. And so they do have a lot of expertise in the work that our petroleum branch does. So that may be one opportunity if there's suggestions if folks want to learn more or maybe see what the FAB has to say about something. That may be one opportunity in the near future to potentially kind of refer those items to the experts on the FAB or vice versa.
Yeah, similarly to this board, the FAB is represented by environmental consulting industry, insurance, banking, and the petroleum jobbers, as well as environmental interests. So very similar to this board, representing very specific interests, specifically related to underground storage tanks.
Thank you.
So when we have a financial assurance related to some other permit, it's controlled here instead of that financial assurance board?
That's correct. We're strictly in excess liability trust fund and underground storage tanks.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I do have a question. Thank you, excuse me, for meeting with us today. That's good. I look forward to talking to you more. My question is, when our board undergoes a rule change, that rule, new rule or rule change is presented by IDEM. They're usually the ones that say, okay, we need to do this. What agency presents your rules for rule changes? Because you mentioned rule changes.
It'd be the same as IDEM.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Commissioner, I do have one comment. I would like to know the meeting schedule for the other boards. I think it would be interesting to take the time to attend.
That would be outstanding. And I'll say one thing that we have contemplated with Billy is whether there may be some synergies in timing too, and room space. And I'll just say, in addition, I mentioned the Recycling Market Development Board, the Compliance Advisory Panel. I do think there's potentially, well, I'll be fully transparent, which the Compliance Advisory Panel has never existed before. So that one is a little bit different category where we have some legislative appointments. It's a kind of goofy provision of the way in the back of the Federal Clean Air Act that we need to have a board along these lines to help provide us feedback on small entities. But I do think in addition to compliance advisory assistance for small entities that are regulated as stationary sources of the Clean Air Act, I think it is also probably likely to be, a very helpful group to be a sounding board for the impact on small entities, for which there's corresponding provisions in state law. And so maybe another example of a great opportunity, if we happen to have meetings the same day, or asking them to kind of take a look at it from a small business perspective, that would be helpful to the board. So we can definitely get you a list of upcoming meetings. I think each board has a slightly different cadence, but we'll get those together. There's love to have that kind of activity.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes, for what it's worth, you're right. To some, it may not be a mystery, but if you've been here long enough, or if you're new to Indiana, this board used to be 3 boards.
Right.
And so the same kind of synergy happened that you're identifying as an opportunity, could well occur, because we all saw it clearly when we got around the same table. It helped a lot.
That's a good. Is there anyone that wishes to address the board today? If not, the next meeting of the Environmental Rules Board is tentatively set for March 12th, 2026 at 1:30 p.m. in Conference Room A of the Indiana Government Center South. The meeting date is tentative and subject to change, and we will keep everyone updated when that is confirmed or another date is chosen. With that, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved. This is Ted Nemec.
A second.
Section.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Sure. Thank you for your time and happy holidays.
All right, Madam Vice Chair.
Yeah.